On the outskirts of the small town of Brimstone lay an old, abandoned mansion that had been forgotten by most. The locals all knew it as the Grayson Manor, a vast property that had once belonged to a wealthy recluse, Arthur Grayson. It was a place where children dared each other to enter, and old men spoke of strange sightings and eerie noises. For years, rumors swirled that Arthur Grayson had left behind a hidden treasure. Some claimed he had stashed away gold coins. Others swore it was rare antiques, hidden somewhere in the mansion's many rooms. Despite the curiosity, few dared to explore it. But today, 3 friends stood at the iron gates of the manor, their faces lit by the glow of flashlights. Tom, the fearless leader of the group, had convinced his friends that they had to be the ones to find the treasure. Joining him were Marcus, a history buff with a knack for details, and Ryan, a skeptic who doubted the treasure even existed. "Are we really doing this?" Ryan asked, eyeing the mansion warily. "Come on, Ryan," Tom replied, grinning. "Think of it as an adventure. Besides, if we find anything, it'll be worth it." "Yeah," Marcus added, already excited. "I've read so much about Grayson." He was a collector. People say he traveled the world, bringing back artifacts from every place he visited. Imagine if some of that's still here. With that, they pushed open the gates, which creaked loudly, as if protesting their entry. They made their way through the overgrown garden, weaving through dead branches and tall grass until they reached the front door. Tom gave the door a gentle push, and it swung open, revealing a dark hallway that smelled of dust and decay. The 3 friends stepped inside, their footsteps echoing as they moved across the cracked tiles. The hallway stretched before them, lined with portraits of somber-looking men, all of whom had the same sharp eyes and strong jawline. Grayson's, undoubtedly. The further they went, the more ominous the mansion felt, as though the eyes of its former occupants were watching them. "Creepy," Ryan muttered, glancing at a particularly stern portrait. "Makes you wonder what kind of people lived here." "They were wealthy and eccentric," Marcus replied. "Arthur Grayson especially. He barely left the house in his later years, which is why so many people think he hid his fortune here." Tom led the way, taking them deeper into the mansion, checking each room they passed. Most of the rooms were empty, filled only with dusty furniture and cobwebs. But as they explored, they found clues that hinted at something more. An old map lay on a desk in what looked like a study, and a worn journal sat on a dusty chair. Marcus eagerly thumbed through the pages, his eyes lighting up. "This is Grayson's journal," he whispered almost reverently. "Listen to this. I have hidden away my collection, the crown of my life's work, in a place where only the truly devoted may find it." "Sounds like a riddle," Tom said, grinning. "See, I told you there was something here." Ryan, still skeptical, crossed his arms. "It could just be a trick. Old folks with too much time on their hands sometimes do stuff like this to keep people guessing." But Marcus shook his head. "No, Grayson was serious about his collection. He spent years building it, and from the sound of it, he didn't want just anyone finding it." They continued searching the mansion, moving from room to room, each with more dust and cobwebs than the last. As they went, they found more clues, scraps of paper with strange symbols, old paintings with odd inscriptions, and ancient coins scattered on a mantel. It was as if Grayson had left a trail, guiding them to his hidden treasure. Finally, they reached a locked door at the end of a narrow hallway. It was sturdier than the others, with intricate carvings along the frame. Tom gave it a push, but it didn't budge. "Maybe this is it," he whispered, feeling a thrill of excitement. "This could be where Grayson hid everything." "But how do we get in?" Ryan asked, frowning. Marcus examined the carvings, tracing his fingers over them. "These symbols, they're similar to the ones we saw on that map. I think they're part of a puzzle." After a moment of studying, Marcus pressed a specific sequence of symbols. With a loud click, the door unlocked, swinging open to reveal a steep staircase descending into darkness. "Guess we're going down," Tom said, leading the way. The staircase spiraled down, taking them beneath the mansion. The air grew cooler, and the walls were lined with old, flickering lanterns. Finally, they reached the bottom and entered a vast room filled with shelves and display cases, each containing items of incredible beauty and value. Artifacts from distant lands, old manuscripts, intricate jewelry, and ancient weapons lined the walls. "Wow," Ryan breathed, his skepticism melting away. "It's real." They moved slowly, marveling at the treasures around them. But as they walked, they noticed something strange. Each item was meticulously labeled, with detailed descriptions of its origins and worth. Grayson had clearly been a man who valued his collection deeply, and it was clear he had designed this space to be a private gallery of his life's work. But one display case in the center of the room caught their attention. Unlike the others, it was empty, save for a single note lying at the bottom. Tom picked up the note, reading it aloud. "To those who find this room, I offer not only my collection, but a choice. You may take any single item from here as your own, but to take more than one will bring a curse upon you. Choose wisely, and may my collection bring you the same joy it brought me." The three friends exchanged glances, each one aware of the weight of the decision. They had found Grayson's treasure, but now they had to decide what to do with it. "I say we each take something small," Tom suggested. "Nothing too valuable, just a token to remember this by." Ryan, looking uneasy, nodded slowly. "Agreed. We don't want to mess with curses." Marcus, however, was captivated by a jeweled compass on a nearby shelf. "This compass, it's rare. It once belonged to a famous explorer. If I'm taking anything, it's this." Tom chose a small, intricate dagger, while Ryan picked up an ancient coin. Each of them took a deep breath, holding their chosen items carefully as they made their way back up the stairs. But as they exited the mansion, the air around them felt heavier, as if something unseen was watching. They drove back to town in silence, each man lost in his thoughts. A few days passed, and nothing seemed unusual, but slowly, strange things began happening. One night, Tom was at home when he noticed the dagger seemed to move slightly every time he looked away. It was subtle, but unmistakable, as if it was alive. Then, he started hearing faint whispers whenever he was alone, voices that seemed to be coming from the dagger itself. Marcus, on the other hand, found himself lost each time he tried to follow the compass. No matter where he went, the compass pointed in impossible directions, leading him deeper into confusion. It was as if the compass wanted him to be lost forever, drifting endlessly. Ryan's coin was no better. The coin seemed to grow heavier each day, weighing him down both physically and mentally. It consumed his thoughts, and he found himself becoming obsessed with its value, unable to let it go. Finally, the three friends met again, each of them haunted by their choice. "We need to return these," Marcus said, his voice shaky. "I don't know what it is, but I can't keep this. I haven't slept in days." Tom and Ryan nodded, equally disturbed. Together, they returned to the Grayson Manor, making their way back down to the hidden room. They placed their items back in their display cases, and almost immediately, a feeling of relief washed over them. The room felt lighter, and they felt the weight of the curse lift. As they left the mansion, they felt a sense of closure, as though they had respected Grayson's wishes. They hadn't taken his collection, but they had experienced something they'd never forget. They'd learned that some treasures weren't meant to be owned, and that respect for the past sometimes meant letting go. The three friends walked away from the Grayson Manor, knowing they would never return, but also knowing they would forever carry the memory of their adventure. For years, the legend of the lost heirloom of the Blackwood family had circulated through the small town of Cedar Falls. It was a story everyone knew well. Old Edward Blackwood, the last of his line, was said to have hidden his family's most prized possession, a priceless ruby ring passed down through generations, somewhere on his sprawling, secluded estate. It was believed that Edward intended to pass the heirloom to his son, but his son had died in a tragic accident. Heartbroken, Edward left no clear will, no instructions, and no indication of where he might have hidden the ring. Some townsfolk believed he'd buried it, others whispered that he'd left clues scattered across the estate. But no one had ever found it, and after Edward's passing, the Blackwood Manor fell into disrepair, eventually becoming the subject of ghost stories and superstition. People said strange lights could be seen in the windows late at night, though the house had been empty for years. One crisp autumn afternoon, 3 friends stood outside the wrought iron gate that led to the abandoned Blackwood estate, staring up at the looming structure. There was George, the unofficial leader of their trio, tall and confident, with a knack for solving mysteries. Beside him stood Leo, a quiet, thoughtful type, who spent more time reading than he did talking. The last of the group was Sam, a gentle giant with an unmatched sense of loyalty, always ready to follow his friends into any adventure, no matter how daunting. "Are we really going in?" Leo asked, eyeing the old manor with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "It's just a story, right?" "Maybe," George replied, a grin spreading across his face. "But wouldn't you want to find out for yourself? That ring could be worth a fortune. Besides, wouldn't it be something to be the ones who finally solve the Blackwood mystery?" Sam chuckled. "I'm game if you guys are. A little adventure won't hurt." With that, they pushed open the gate, which creaked ominously as they entered. They made their way down a narrow, overgrown path toward the mansion, passing twisted trees and dead leaves crunching underfoot. The air was cold, and an eerie silence seemed to blanket the grounds. When they finally reached the front door, George gave it a push, and it swung open with a slow, reluctant groan. The inside of the manor was dimly lit, its once grand furniture draped in dust. The walls were lined with old portraits of stern-faced men, all with the same piercing gaze and strong jawline, a testament to the Blackwood family's storied past. "This place is like a time capsule," Leo whispered, his voice barely above a murmur as they wandered through the grand foyer. "It feels like no one's touched anything in years." They continued through the rooms, moving carefully so as not to disturb anything. Leo took note of the furniture, the tapestries, and the detailed craftsmanship of the wooden staircase that spiraled up to the second floor. Each object seemed to hold a secret, as if the walls themselves were alive with the whispers of the past. After a while, they came upon Edward Blackwood's study, a large wood-paneled room filled with shelves of books and a massive mahogany desk. Papers lay scattered across the desk, yellowed with age, as though Edward had simply walked out one day and never returned. George began rifling through the papers, hoping to find some hint, some clue, that might lead them to the lost heirloom. "Look at this," he said, holding up a handwritten note that seemed to be part of a journal entry. The note read, "To safeguard my legacy, I have hidden my most prized possession, where only those who understand the true spirit of the Blackwood family may find it. Let the symbols of our past guide you." "Symbols of our past?" Sam echoed, scratching his head. "What does that even mean?" Leo's eyes gleamed with intrigue. "It must refer to some family history or something meaningful to Edward. Maybe he left clues around the house." Taking this as their first real lead, they began a thorough search of the study, examining books, paintings, and even the ornate rug that lay beneath the desk. After nearly an hour, Leo finally found something promising, a small brass key hidden beneath a loose floorboard. "Found something!" he called out, holding up the key. The key didn't match any lock in the study, so they ventured deeper into the manor, moving from room to room in search of its purpose. Finally, they came upon a door at the end of a dark corridor. It was smaller and less ornate than the others, but the key fit perfectly. Taking a deep breath, George turned the key, and the door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Looks like we're heading down," George murmured, stepping carefully onto the first step. The staircase led them to a cold stone basement, where the only light came from a few shafts of sunlight seeping through cracks in the walls. The basement was filled with old crates and covered with thick cobwebs, and the air smelled damp and stale. At the far end of the room stood a heavy iron chest, its surface covered in a fine layer of dust. George approached the chest and, with a grunt, lifted the lid. Inside lay an assortment of objects: old letters, some faded family photographs, a pocket watch, and finally, a small, intricately carved wooden box. "This must be it," George whispered, carefully lifting the box from the chest. Inside the box, resting on a velvet lining, was the ring, a brilliant ruby set in an ornate gold band, glinting even in the dim light. "Wow," Sam breathed, his eyes wide. "That's gotta be worth a fortune." Leo, however, was captivated by something else. Tucked beside the ring was another note, written in the same spidery handwriting as the one in the study. "To the one who finds this ring. Wealth is fleeting, but the bonds of loyalty and courage are eternal. If you have come here seeking fortune, remember that true treasure lies not in gold, but in the hearts of those we hold dear." For a moment, the friends stood in silence, absorbing the meaning of Edward's words. "So, what do we do now?" Sam asked, glancing between his friends. George closed the box and placed it back in the chest. "We leave it," he said, surprising both Sam and Leo. "The ring belongs here, with the Blackwood family. This place, it's like a memorial to Edward and his son. It wouldn't feel right to take it." Leo nodded, understanding. "Yeah, he wanted someone to understand the value of loyalty, not just treasure." They closed the chest and made their way back up the stairs, each of them feeling a strange sense of peace. The adventure they had sought turned out to be something more meaningful than they had expected. They left the house quietly, not saying much, but each knowing that they had shared in something profound. As they walked back down the winding path toward the gate, Sam finally broke the silence. "You know," he said, "I think Edward would have liked us." George smiled, glancing back at the old manor. "Yeah, I think so too." They continued walking, their hearts lighter than when they'd arrived, and with the memory of the heirloom safely locked away, not in their hands, but in their minds, where it belonged. They knew they would never forget the lesson Edward had left behind, a legacy far more valuable than any ring. And as they reached the gates, they turned one last time to look at Blackwood Manor, grateful for the experience and the hidden treasure they'd found within themselves.